Hi, I'm Peter Ryan. Welcome to the CX Files. Finding the right contact center facility to deliver great CX is no easy task. It's not an exact science, and it takes a great deal of foresight to strike the right balance between affordability and picking somewhere that agents want to work. Today on the CX Files, we speak with ESRP's Jeff Pappas, a real estate professional who's been sourcing the best in contact center facilities around the world for over 2 decades. In our discussion, Jeff talks about the changes he's seen in contact centers over the years, the rising popularity of BPO business parks, and what customer experience management professionals need to look for post-vaccine in CX facilities. Jeff Pappas, welcome to the CX Files podcast. It's great to have you here. And for those who don't know you, you have been an executive that has been involved in site selection and real estate for the contact center for some time. I would say that you're very much a legend in the space, and your reputation precedes you. We're truly grateful that you could join us today. Maybe start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and ESRP, which is the firm that you work with.
Yeah, so our firm was started 7 years ago by Emmett Smith, a former Dallas Cowboy, and we are now really 100% focused on tenant representation. So we represent the user, and we're really, I wouldn't call ourselves a real estate company. I think we're more of a real estate technology company because our focus has been and always will be on labor analytics to driving the real estate decision in whatever industry. Fortunately, my focus is on the BPO, back office, labor intense companies, but our office represents headquarter users, healthcare users, logistics, distribution, warehouse. So we have industrial users as well as office users, but our focus has really been on allowing the labor analytics to assist in driving the real estate decision for our clients. So, and when it comes down to the back office operations, 10% of their cost operations is typically real estate and the rest is labor, right? So, but you can't have labor without people. You can't have people, you can't have a facility without people. And so it's kind of, it works both ways, right? So, aside from the, labor being so hard to come by now, it's so important that our clients and any contact center make the right decision now more so than in the past. And whether that's a real estate decision or a people decision, it's got to be the right decision. And that's our goal. Just make that decision, mitigate that risk.
Great stuff. And I can honestly say that you and myself, as well as some of other people from our group, have been collectively to contact centers together and individually around the world. And that's probably a good point to begin our discussion today. Let's talk a little bit about the contact center and the facilities. Mm-hmm. What, in your opinion, pre-pandemic, were the key elements that, whether it was a captive operator or a BPO, was looking for when they were trying to source a new contact center operation?
Well, it's a great question. I think density has always been the issue for contact centers, right? For years, you look at it and say, okay, the insurance company or the law firm, they're getting 200 to 150 square feet per person. Well, it started getting scrunched for 100 to 110 to 90 square feet. It got down to pre-pandemic in the U.S. to about 80 square foot per employee for an office space. That's pretty dense. In Latin America, of course, it's a little bit lower. It's probably closer to 60,000 square feet per employee. So their goal was to try to get the average seat cost down as low as possible. And Peter, you know this as well as anybody. The margins are so thin, especially in the BPO world, that where can you cut? Sometimes you can't cut wages. Sometimes you can't cut technology. Sometimes you can't cut electricity or utilities, some of those other costs, insurance. But where can you cut? Well, you can cut on real estate, right? You can find the cheapest real estate cost you can. You can find, stuff as many people into one facility as you can to lower that real estate cost, but still be attractive to employees. Because the last thing an employee wants is to be right next to somebody. So that, I think, was always the issue, is how do I downsize my real estate, but keep my people the same amount. Secondly, CapEx. I think what was happening pre-pandemic, I thought this was very clever on, especially the third-party outsourcers, right, that don't maybe have a name. Like, if Adidas opened a contact center, or Nike or Apple or, Verizon, all these guys that have these names that are very knowledgeable to anybody, no matter what country you're in. You're in Nigeria, you know who Adidas is, right? If you're in Nigeria, you may not know who Aegis is, or Concentrix, or, a company that maybe is a third-party outsourcer. So it's always harder to attract people. So I think what companies were doing were really putting some money, as much as they can, into the capital expense of a building, right? Maybe instead of using an old mall or an old retail site, maybe taking an office space that's very well located and make that facility as nice as possible. Doesn't cost a lot of money, but it does take capital outlay to make a space. So what happens is, a plug and play is always vital, right, from a real estate standpoint. But if you go to a market and a plug and play is available, it's available for a reason, right? Probably either one or two reasons. One, there wasn't a very good labor market, so the plug and play is available. Or if the client lost the contract, moved out of the market, right? So there's the goods and bads, right? But then you got to make sure that plug and play, A, is in good shape, B, is in the right part of the city. Because when you go into a market that has other employers in there, you got to be competing with those people. So maybe your facility is on the wrong side of town, or maybe that plug and play is pretty down and dirty, where other people have much nicer facilities. I had a client one time, we looked at plug and plays, this is pre-pandemic, consistently. But we went into a market in South Carolina and we visited some competing employers and realized their spaces are pretty nice. We went and visited the plug and play that was available, and it wasn't as nice. Like, how do you compare paying the same person the same wage, but they get to work in this facility and they got to go into this facility that's not as nice? Well, they ended up going into a build-to-suit kind of facilities, so they was able to put CapEx. So I think those are the two key things pre-pandemic, was stuff as many as you can, but still make it as nice as possible.
Okay. Great.
I hope it answers the question on that.
Oh, no,
pandemic.
Very much, very much. So that leads to an obvious question, Jeff. It looks like the vaccine rollout in many different countries is going exceptionally well. And one of the things I keep hearing about, and I'm sure you do as well as a professional in the real estate industry, is that enterprises and their BPO partners are clamoring to get the agents back in the centers. There's a real sense that the hybrid model is going to exist, that you will have a degree of work from home, but you're also going to have a lot of agents that will be moving back into the physical facilities. So when you're talking about the pre-pandemic times, when agents in many cases were scrunched into facilities as a means of saving costs, I don't think that same dynamic is necessarily on the minds of operators, as they have to take into account health concerns, as they need to take into account social distancing. What are your clients asking now in terms of what they're looking for, as they want you to help them source a new contact center facility, say in H2 of 2021 and beyond?
Well, the increase in per square foot employee, right? That's a given, right? Now, it's probably close to, I got one client that says, look, we're going to do at least 100. They went from 80 to 100 per square foot per employee. And I think one of the key things is that, A, COVID allows, you need to have more space, right? Last thing you want is to be right next to somebody, whether you use plexiglass or not, right? But you still want to be able to communicate. So in order to get rid of the plexiglass and have some still kind of opening, you got to be far enough away from each other. And Latin America, the same thing. So that's probably increased, 10%, probably 20% maybe. And then no seat sharing. That kind of comes along with the size of the facility now. Agents want their own workspace. Last thing an agent wants, at least right now, until things, could it be a year, 2 years, who knows? But I know that if I've got to I got to go into a facility. I want to know who sat in there. Is it clean? Well, if I'm the only one that sat in there, it's up to me. It's my, if I clean it up, it's me. Nobody else that is, one thing about COVID that I think is going to really benefit the workplace. And I think people are going to be much more conscious of when they go into the office at what degree of sickness, right? Now, I know this is just very vague, but look, before pre-COVID, if you had a cold or you felt sick, you still went in the office because that's just the mentality, right? The mentality of people is just, look, I can't call in sick because I have a cold, or I'm going to go in and I'm going to fight through it, right? My clients need me. Now it's like, wait a minute, A, I have the ability to work from home, but secondly, I'm not going to come in if I'm even remotely sick, because it's just going to make everybody else more comfortable. And it kills the flu season. We had a great flu season, and people say, well, COVID and flu. No. The active participation of people staying safe and the mask stop the flu season, right? So that's going to be very important for the size of the facility. So the agents are going to have their own workspace. Now, break areas are going to be even bigger. Common areas are going to be even bigger, more common. So that way, people have the room to social distance, have the room to meet, because social distance is important, but also being social is very important. So, so the square footage has gone up post COVID. CapEx. I mean, now the CapEx is the cash is just not there. They've had to fund so much money to figure out bigger workstations, rehabbing their workstations. There are companies that went from 95 in the office to 95% at home, and now they're coming back 50-50. And a lot of times what they did, and a lot of companies are doing in South Africa, is they would actually send a call center in a box to the facility, to their house, right? Mm-hmm. Desk, chair, Wi-Fi booster. I mean, everything they needed, they sent to their house. They pay for this for their employees, right? So that's the cost they had to say. Now they don't have cost to open up a new facility. They don't have the capital to put in the building, so it must be a plug and play with 100% funded build out from the landlord if it's not a plug and play, right? So the CapEx is a bit more minimal because they've spent so much for the work from home. But it's going to be smaller, right? So now, you may have 100 square feet per employee, but you're going to have now a facility that's probably 50% smaller than what it was before. If you were looking at pre-pandemic at 700 seats, you're probably at 350 seats. If you're looking at 300 seats, you're probably at 150, right? So I think from a post-pandemic, those three things. And lastly, I think amenities, right? Mm-hmm. In order to get the employee to want to come back to the office, whether it's 100% of the time or they have at home half the time, in the office half the time, you have to have building amenities or walkable amenities, because the agent at home has been able to go to the refrigerator, get a sub, get a drink, get food, whatever, come back to the desk and work. That's what they're going to kind of want back when they go to their facilities. They want to have that ability to say, well, look, I can go get a soda or I can get a Coke whenever I want to and get up, as I had before, right? So you can't just stick them into the work and put them at the desk and say, okay, you're in the desk for 8 hours and back to where it was before. I think they want a bit more and realized that, hey, even a little bit of freedom is good, right? They may be able to. So I think those really, are I think the four key things of a post-pandemic contact center is the size has decreased, but the square feet per employee has increased. CapEx is non-existent, and you've got to have amenities. That's together.
Yeah. And I think that those four elements make a great deal of sense, Jeff. And you mentioned the amenities, and I want to touch back on something that you spoke about in the pre-pandemic times, and that was the actual physical atmosphere of the workplace. And, you and I have both been in facilities that are outstanding. We've also been in facilities, as you mentioned, that really, quite frankly, leave a lot to be desired. And I was talking with a contact the other day, and I was saying to her that in my view, the actual atmosphere that people are working in, the pleasantness of it is going to be a real differentiator in terms of recruiting. Yeah. Are your clients talking to you about being able to source locations that have that physical atmosphere that will make people want to come into work? Is that a priority for them at this point?
Oh, yeah. Even more light than before, even more windows than before. Being around, other active companies, right? The last thing you want to be in is in a business park where 75% of them are at work at home, right? They don't get that social interaction because you can only get so much interaction at home. Working at home is great, right? Not 100% of the time, right? There's some that do it. There's some that can do it. But, companies are really focused on being in a really, the work play and the work-life balance, all that stuff is always important, but more so now because, the employee realized they have a choice.
Yeah.
I can work for you at X wage and have the option of, okay, I work at home for a couple of days and I work in the office a couple of days. I can work for them at the same wage. I'm in the office 100% of the time. Okay. Well, you're doing the exact same thing. I'm going to work for the one that allows me to work at home and in the office. Right. So now, it's okay, great. Now, if they are both even, who's got the better environment? Yeah. I want to be close to my office and close to work. Close to home. Understand that. But it's like, what environment invites me in? What allows me to grow more so than before, right? Don't just come in, say hello, sit on a desk, do my work and leave. You can't do that. You've got to give them, art pieces to look at. You got to give them, just little things that make them feel like, hey, you know what? I feel like I'm at home, even though I'm not. But I'm at the same time, I'm safe, but I'm also seeing people that I want to talk to, right? That bring, if I had a birthday at home, who's going to bring me cake besides my wife? Love my wife. She's fantastic. If I go to the office on my birthday, I get cake and 18 happy birthdays, So you gotta have things like that. That's how culture and companies, I know companies these days, especially the contact center, because they employ so many people, right? And their business is very difficult at times, right? There's some companies that have great business models that, everybody wants to talk to them. But a lot of the contact centers, their business is sometimes people don't want to talk to you, or they have to talk to you and they're dreading calling the contact center or getting called. So you've got to have an environment these people want to be in. They're satisfactory, they're happy, and that shows to the consumer, right? You've got to make sure that person is as happy as possible in that environment. So that way, and one of the ways is culture. You've got to be able to create a culture in that office by, who that company is. And I think you're going to start seeing that word even more, that, that they want to say, look, I'd rather work for you at 50 cents less because I know your culture is better than that one. And unfortunately, I feel like Amazon sometimes is getting battered a bit because, yes, they pay $15 an hour, but sometimes they don't have the overall respective treatment of their employees that, hey, if I can make $14 an hour here and know be treated well and be here long term, or make 15, then probably be out in a couple of months, their decision-making process is so much more important that you've got to have your facility that has to create that culture. It's got to show who you are.
Okay, now you raised the topic of business parks a few minutes ago, and I think this is an interesting angle to pivot on. In the recent front office omnibus survey that Ryan Strategic Advisory published, where we sounded 628
great survey, by the way. Great survey, by the way.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. We found that of the 628 enterprise decision makers we spoke to, one of the most interesting, compelling things was when they were sourcing a nearshore location or an offshore location, the availability of business parks specifically designed for CX and BPO was a huge priority. Jeff, why do you think this is? What's driving the interest in business parks right now when organizations are looking to move facilities into the nearshore or the offshore?
Well, there's a couple of different concerns. There's positives and there's negatives of a business park, right? Everybody knows the obvious negatives, and I think Altea in Honduras and South Peninsular has done a good job on this, on poaching, right? In a business park, they're all meeting at a common area and says, I make $12 an hour, I make 10. You're doing the same thing. Come work for us, right? There's always not going to be that poaching. But that poaching is going to be, you don't want that poaching in the park. You'll have it at home, right? If three people that are friends all work for three different companies and they talk about each other's jobs, and that's going to happen, right? But what you don't want is, losing people before they get on the elevator. So business parks do have that negativity, but if it's controlled by the park owner, that's great. Standalone is always nice because in a post-COVID world, you want to be able to control access and control who your employees unfortunately talk to. But a business park that is done well and has all different types of companies, right? You don't want a BPO business park that has 7 same, right? But if you have a bunch of different companies that all have kind of compatible employment, that's great. Like if you have in the office park an entry level company that's all they do is entry level work, right? They don't really have that next step up. Well, they maybe, there's another company there that is very attractive to that second or third level agent. Well, you know what? That person now knows, I may not grow here, but I can grow in the same park with another company and improve my standing and improve my ability and do more than what I'm doing here. Great. But then the other one gets backfilled. So they're not fighting for the same employees, but they're working off each other. Like some people come in and work with employees and apply for this one company that's higher level. They don't have that capability or the experience, or they just go across the business park to do it. Right. And in that business park has, restaurants, hotels, school, all different kinds of the business park. Because again, it's not a business park as you see it as a bunch of companies. It's a business park that has retail, that has a hotel, that has education companies, that has, it's like a true little city. Like when you go to China, I've been go to China, and some of these tech parks are actually cities. They have their own airport, they have their own rail, they have their own schools, and it's just inside of a big tech park. And we're talking millions and millions of people that live in this tech park, that employ all these companies in this tech park. So, which I think is a great idea. And fascinating tidbit that I heard, I never thought about this. As I was doing a project in Johannesburg, South Africa for a client, and I was talking to a couple of the BPOs, and I was talking to the people at BPESA as well. And one thing I kept hearing was, look, a BPO that comes in this market wants to be around other BPOs. Most importantly, because the unemployment in the youth is so high that when they get a job, they typically stay at that job. And you may have 3 or 4 people carpooling together, right, that don't work for the same company. They park in a garage and each one goes to their walkable BPOs, right? Mm-hmm. The last thing you want is to carpool somebody, drop somebody off, and then drive another hour or half an hour. If you can park or drop somebody off and then drive another 2 blocks, go to my BPO office, we can all meet together on the street. And it's almost like, you ever been to Havana, Cuba? Yep. Where in Havana, they're not taxis, but someone just pulls up in front of this house, and whoever wants to hop in the car and go somewhere just hops in. They drop somebody off, they pick somebody up. It's like an unofficial Uber, right? And it's just people doing it just because that's what they need to do. So that's what I thought was very interesting. So look, talent follows talent, tech follows tech. So you've got to be in and around these. What they don't want is what's happened in the Philippines, where you have a 26-story building and you have 26 contact center companies in there, one on each floor, right? Or some on the same floor, right? So the business park that has done really well in the United States, where you have your own separate entrance, it's almost like your own parking lot, your own entrance and all that. Even though you're in a business park with 3 other competing companies, you'll never see them, right? Because they come into the front, they come into their parking area, they come into their bus area, they have their own break area. They never really interact with somebody across the business park, right? So, and usually business parks, lastly, Peter, I know it's an extended answer, but lastly, the telecom tends to be much more reliable, the telecom and the electricity, reliable in a business park run by a really good owner than, if you're in a building in, say, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and you're in an office building that's a great, nice building, but you're behind, 300 houses, I guarantee you those homes are probably feeding off your electricity, right?
Yeah.
It happens, right? So you've got all these positives in nearshore, where in the United States, it's a lot different. In the United States, you want to be as far away from another competitor as possible because you don't want to give the third person too many choices, right? So it's the total opposite mindset. And that's why I think downtowns and city centers do so well in nearshore and offshore than they do onshore, right? Because that's just where everything is. Activity.
Okay. So, Jeff, this has been absolutely fascinating, and thanks for your insight so far. Final question. Yeah. You're going into, we're all going into the second half of 2021. When you are working with your clients or when you're advising prospects, what are the most important elements that they should be thinking about when they're looking to try and source the right location? If you could think of maybe 2 to 3 different pearls of wisdom that you would give them, what would they be?
Well, amenities in and nearby, right? Whether it's quickly drivable or preferably walkable, right? If it's drivable, you can get in your car, get to there, and get back. And I'm talking amenities that are cost effective. The last thing you want to be is with amenities of, walking distance of lunch where you're going to spend $100 at lunch. No, you want to spend $5, $6, $7, $10 at lunch, get back in your car, go, right? Or they're walkable. Location is so important that there's not a long commute, but also if you're going to tell your employees, right, hey, you know what? We're going to give you the option of to come in or not to come in. Okay. You're still going to have your productivity stores, but so you've got to sit there and go, okay, if I want them to come in, is my space nice? Do they want to come into my space, or is it a struggle? Then they won't do it. Or if you're saying, look, you have to spend half your week here and half your week there, then you've got to make sure that your commute's not very long, or, it's not, if you're going to pick work from home and come in the office, those work from homes have got to be into the office. You can't do, great, my facility is an hour away from my house, and I'm never going to go in there. If I am, I'm going to go there once and I'm going to hate it because by the time I get to the office. So amenities, location, in and around a social environment is important. And whether it's in the office or near the office, you want to have social engagement, collaborative areas, right? I think one thing about our office, which I think is great, we office at the Star, which is Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters. There's quite a bit of social and interactive spaces because, that's how Jerry's made it, right? He wants fans to come, even though we do everything there but game day, right? And it's kind of closed off. The key areas, like the football, where the practice facility, this is the view from our break room that you can see behind me, but not everything is easy to get into. But on the outside, there's so many things for someone to do, right? So if I work there's so many things I can do to get social interaction, social engagement in that area, whether I walk to the pond to feed the ducks or I walk over to the little fun field he has in the front of the building. That it's a plaza that shows games and shows highlights, has shops. There's a little bitty football field next to the Omni Hotel that, this interaction. So that's what, you want to make that real estate as soft and friendly as possible, right? Because it's hard right now, to get people to go to work, with this stimulus money, and which some states are getting rid of and some states are keeping. So if it's a struggle to get them to apply and get them to work. And once you get them, you got to make sure you treat them with the utmost respect and give them everything that either you perceive they need or they need, right? So I think those are some of the key things. The more collaborative areas, location is always going to be important, and amenities is extremely important.
Thanks for downloading the CX Files podcast. If you have a moment, please give us a star rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, because this really helps other people to find the podcast. If you have any suggestions for future guests, or ideas, people, or topics, then please just find myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan on LinkedIn and send a suggestion.